If only I had access to a virtual training expert when I was head of learning and development. And I've held that role in a couple of organizations. My life would have been so much easier. I say this because virtual training has now become the fundamental bedrock of everything that we do in the L&D world. And let me tell you why. My name's Erica Farmer, and I'm the business director and co-founder of Quantum Rise Talent Group. I've got over 20 years experience in corporate learning and development with some of the UK's largest brands. We now work with organisations to take their digital and virtual training from good to great. Over the last 3 years and since the pandemic, we've seen massive acceleration in digital transformation in learning, HR and other people-related industries. And the one thing that we see time and time again is having that virtual training skill set linked to support everything else that we do in blended learning, in Teams meetings, in manager engagement, in pretty much blended and hybrid learning. And back in the early 2000s, when I was heading up training teams, we were doing virtual learning, but we didn't really know what we were doing it. We didn't know how we were doing it. There wasn't really any established teaching methodology or pedagogy to support it. So these are my 3 reasons why having access to a virtual training expert as a head of learning and development makes your life so much easier. Number 1, pace. And I don't mean pace on a day-to-day basis, I mean pace of delivery and therefore creating more impact. If you can access a virtual training expert, rather than just putting your teams and your design and delivery folk on Zoom or WebEx or MS Teams or whatever it might be, and sussing it out and figuring it out and getting some negative feedback and boring people because they're doing what they always did in the classroom and just plonking it online. If you had someone who knew that pedagogy, who knew to engage every 5 minutes, who knew to design materials and resources in a way that works better on screen for the brain, who knew and understood the science of learning around taking that new knowledge and skill and moving it from the short-term working memory to the long-term memory, I would have cut through and been able to deliver a lot quicker and with a lot more impact with the online training that I was doing back then. And we had some wins. I remember particularly upskilling some underwriters in the insurance company that I worked for so they could engage and educate financial advisors through what was WebEx, BT WebEx at the time. And we were getting people to engage and write on screens and use the chat, but there was no real methodology. And that came with test and learn over a period of months. And I wish I had someone who could have just come to us and said, here's a set of principles, I'm going to train you in it, you have a go, so you can see the difference between what okay, good online learning looks like and what a great learning experience feels like. Number 2, and I've said it already, engagement. In the online space, it took me a long time to realize that content isn't king. Engagement is the new kid on the block and it's here to stay. And if you can't engage your learners in your online training, you might as well not be there. You're wasting your time. And again, if I had someone who was a virtual learning expert when I was a head of L&D, who could support these engagement methodologies both synchronously and asynchronously and really fire people up around their virtual learning experiences, that would have made all of my influencing, my conversations with stakeholders around why we should be doing blended learning, not everything in the classroom, a lot more easier and successful. Number 3, cost. Why are we still spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on mileage and hotel rooms and training rooms on knowledge and skill-based training when we can do that in the virtual space? And again, I wish looking at my budgets, particularly in the healthcare role, I was heading up leadership development, talent and apprenticeships. The amount of money we were spending on hotel rooms and community rooms, for training rooms around the country in areas where we didn't have a office presence. It was heartbreaking looking at my profit and loss every month, to have a look at all this money being eroded away out of my budget when I knew I could have been doing something more impactful with it. In the virtual space, you might spend a little bit of time or money upskilling your design and delivery teams in virtual training best practice, but that's a one-off investment. And then everything else is cost neutral other than salaries. You know, if we're delivering over Zoom or Teams, whatever it might be, okay, our Zoom license is what, £140 a year. Most people already have Google Classroom or Teams or whatever it might be. But just take all that big chunk of money that you historically spend on mileage and hotels and training rooms and even printing and, you know, paper resources and workbooks that end up getting either chucked away in the bin or certainly in the bottom of the drawer, best case scenario, and look at the difference when you digitize with interactive learning, e-learning, online resources that can supplement a great virtual learning session. So they're my 3 reasons of why I wish I had access to a virtual learning expert when I was a head of L&D. We have access to these pedagogy, this methodology. Us at Quantum Rise, we trained over 2,000 trainers, tutors, assessors, consultants and coaches in this space. So if you're still wondering around these pain points, if you're still having these challenges as a head of L&D, have a think about what I've said today and get in touch for a chat. Thanks very much.